There is a room inside you that you have locked shut. A room where the memory of someone who left still echoes, where the weight of being unseen has pressed the walls closer together year after year. I have the key to that room, and what I found inside it will change everything you believe about yourself and about the people I am already sending toward your life. I need you to know something about the loneliness you carry. You have learned to carry it quietly. You have become so skilled at moving through your days without showing anyone how hollow certain moments feel. You sit at a table surrounded by people and still sense a kind of distance that words can never fully cross. You laugh when you are supposed to laugh. You answer when someone asks how you are doing. You say the right things and move to the next moment. But somewhere beneath the surface of all that normal movement, there is a part of you that is still waiting for someone to really see you, to really stay, to really choose you without hesitation and without conditions. And the waiting has been so long that you have started to wonder whether it will ever end. I know that path you are walking. I know it intimately, personally, beyond the general sorrow of humanity. I know the specific corridor of your inner life, the distinct shade of loneliness that settles over you when silence gets too heavy, the way you sometimes revisit old conversations trying to find the exact moment things started to fall apart. My eyes are upon you in the fullest sense of that phrase. Every single hidden room of your life is known to me. The rooms you have closed off because the pain stored inside them was too much to face. The rooms where you keep the memories of people who promised to stay and did not. The rooms where grief has gathered dust because you never had enough safety to mourn properly. What I want to do in this moment, and I want you to hear this as an invitation, not as an obligation, is to walk with you through some of those rooms, to bring light into them gently, carefully, at a pace your heart can hold. Because the journey toward wholeness always involves understanding where the wounds came from, and the wounds of loneliness and relational pain cut deeper than almost anything the human heart can carry. So let us begin there. Let us begin with the truth that you were made for more than this. There is a design woven into the fabric of who you are, a design so fundamental that you cannot escape it even when you try. You were not created to walk through life as a solitary traveler with no companions, no witnesses, no one who knows your name and sincerely cares what happens to you. I shaped your heart for companionship, for shared life. I built you with a capacity for depth in relationship, a longing for belonging, a hunger for the kind of connection where you can exhale fully because you can simply be without performing or proving or protect yourself from the person you are with. That hunger is not a flaw in your design. That ache you feel when authentic connection is absent, that is not weakness. It is evidence of what you were meant to have. The pain of loneliness is only possible because you were created for fellowship. The ache itself proves the design. And so the very fact that you have suffered from the absence of deep, authentic relationship is itself a testimony to the relational nature I placed within you from the beginning. But somewhere along the path of your life, things happened that turned the journey toward that kind of connection from something merely difficult into something that felt genuinely dangerous. Maybe it started early. Maybe there was someone in the first years of your life who was supposed to make you feel safe, and they failed to. Maybe home was a place where love came with conditions attached, where approval had to be earned and could always be withdrawn. Maybe you learned very young that people you trust can hurt you, that closeness creates vulnerability, and vulnerability creates the possibility of pain. And so the safest thing to do was to keep a careful distance from your own heart's deepest needs. Or perhaps it happened later. Perhaps you gave yourself to a friendship, a partnership, a love, and it ended in a way that left marks you have never fully let anyone see. The betrayal of someone you trusted absolutely. The abandonment that came without explanation, without warning, without any acknowledgement of what you had offered them. The slow fading of a relationship you thought was solid, watching it become thinner and thinner until one day you realized you were essentially alone in what you had thought was a shared space. These experiences do not leave you unchanged. Every relational wound reconfigures something in the way you move toward people. Every time trust was broken, your nervous system made a note of it. Every time you opened your heart and found the other person was not careful with what you gave them, something in you drew back a little further. And over time, without you necessarily making a conscious decision about it, You may have arrived at a place where guarding yourself feels more natural than opening yourself, where self-protection has become your default position, where expecting real connection feels foolish because the price it demands seems always to exceed what you can pay. The loneliness you carry now is layered loneliness, complex loneliness. It goes far deeper than the absence of company. It is the particular kind of aloneness that comes from having wanted connection and been hurt by it, from having tried and been disappointed, from having offered yourself and found that what you offered was either not received or received and eventually discarded. It is the loneliness of someone who has begun to wonder whether the problem lies not in circumstances, but in something essential about who they are. And that is exactly the lie I need to dismantle in your presence today. Because somewhere in the accumulation of relational disappointments, false beliefs have taken root. Not beliefs you chose deliberately, but beliefs that formed like sediment settling at the bottom of a river, layer by layer, experience by experience. Beliefs that have now become the invisible lens through which you interpret every new person who comes into your life, every new possibility of connection that appears on the path ahead. Deception has clouded your mind about who you are and what you deserve. Let me show you the exact lies, because the path to healing always begins with naming what is false. The first lie is this: that you are fundamentally difficult to love. This thought lives in you quietly. It rarely announces itself with those exact words. Sometimes it sounds like, "I am too much." Sometimes it sounds like, "I am not enough." Sometimes it expresses itself through the precise logic of your past. If the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally struggled so much, then perhaps the problem is me. This lie has a seductive internal consistency. It explains your history. It gives you a reason for the patterns you have experienced. And because it offers an explanation, it feels like wisdom, like self-awareness, like you have finally understood something true about yourself. But it is a story, a construction. It is a story built out of other people's limitations, other people's wounds, other people's failures of love. The people who hurt you were themselves broken, carrying wounds of their own that shaped their capacity to love. The parent who could not give you what you needed was not giving you an accurate assessment of your value. They were demonstrating the limits of their own capacity. The partner who left was revealing the boundaries of their own heart. They were revealing the constraints of their own heart, their own fears, their own inability to sustain what real love requires. The friend who betrayed your trust was showing you something about themselves. They were showing you something true about themselves. Listen to me now. I need your full attention for what I am about to say, because the enemy of your soul has been whispering this lie for so long that it has started to sound like your own voice. You are not difficult to love. You never were. The people who made you feel that way were showing you the ceiling of their own capacity, the measure of their own wounds, the limit of what their own unhealed hearts could offer. They were not giving you an accurate reading of what you are worth. They were giving you an accurate reading of what they could carry. And you, young, trusting, desperate to belong, took their limitation and wore it like a name. You took their inability and called it your identity. I am asking you to take that name off, right now, in this moment. Because every day you carry a name someone else gave you out of their own brokenness is a day you walk through the world wearing a costume that hides the person I actually made. You are beautiful to me in a way that defies your ability to comprehend. The complexity of who you are, the depths of your inner life, the things you feel most self-conscious about. These are the very things I crafted with the most care, the aspects of your being that I find most extraordinary. The sensitivity you have been told is too much. That is a gift I placed in you with deliberate intention, because the world needs people who feel deeply, who notice what others miss, who carry the kind of awareness that can hold another person's pain with tenderness. The need for closeness, you have been told, is too demanding. That is the exact design specification of a heart built for profound connection. A heart I made with extra capacity because I knew the kind of love I was going to bring into your life would require a heart that could hold it. When I look at you, I see someone made exactly as I intended, carrying dimensions of beauty and capacity that are still emerging into full expression, because the right conditions for their flowering are still being arranged. But the arranging is happening. Even now, Even in the middle of this conversation, the conditions are shifting. The second lie is this, that you always end up alone because something in the pattern of your life guarantees it. This is the lie of inevitability. It says, look at your history. Look at how many times this has ended the same way. Look at how the people you love most reliably disappoint you or leave you. The evidence seems overwhelming. The pattern seems undeniable. And so you have begun to treat your past as a prophecy, a reliable prediction of what your future must hold. But a pattern from your past is not a sentence on your future. The repetition of painful relational experiences is evidence of something different than you think, that healing has not yet happened, and that certain wounds, still unaddressed, tend to draw certain kinds of experiences to them. Not because you are cursed, but because the unhealed parts of you make certain choices unconsciously. Certain dynamics familiar in ways that draw you toward what you know, even when what you know causes pain. Healing changes the pattern by changing you, so that the choices you make going forward come from a different, healthier place. So that what feels familiar begins to shift as the wounds that shaped your old sense of normal begin to close. So that you begin opening honestly to something new, free from the gravity of old fears. The third lie is the one that perhaps cuts deepest, that you have been abandoned, and that this abandonment reflects something about my posture toward you. Somewhere beneath the surface of your relational pain, there is sometimes this question: where was God when I was hurting? Where was God when the person I trusted most betrayed me? Where was God when I was so lonely that I could barely breathe? If God is a God who provides good things to his children, why have relationships been such a consistent source of pain for me? These are honest questions, and I welcome them. Let me answer them honestly. My presence surrounded you in every one of those painful moments, close enough to feel what you felt, grieving alongside you rather than observing from a comfortable distance. My hand was on your shoulder in those dark rooms. My grief was present alongside your grief. And I have been at work in the aftermath of every disappointment, working redemptively within it, drawing purpose from the wreckage, to draw from even your worst relational experiences something that will ultimately serve your wholeness and your growth. The journey you are on is not one I have left you to navigate alone. You have felt alone. I know you have. That feeling is real and I do not dismiss it. But the feeling of aloneness and the fact of my presence are not mutually exclusive. There were moments, perhaps more than you realize, when my nearness was the very thing that held you together without your knowing the source of that sustaining force. Now, I want to bring you further along this path, not just to comfort you in the pain you have known, but to lead you through an authentic process of healing deep enough to prepare you for the kinds of connections that are truly coming. Connections that will require a healed heart in order to be received and sustained in the way they deserve. But first, I need you to understand something about what healing actually is and what it is not. Healing honors what happened to you by refusing to erase it. The people who failed you in ways that had real consequences, and those consequences remain even as you decide to heal. Healing asks you to face what you experienced fully, to let it be as significant as it was, to move through the real work of grief and processing and understanding, rather than bypassing it with forced forgiveness. Real healing begins with permission. Permission to acknowledge the full weight of what was done to you or what you lost. Permission to grieve without a timeline, without someone else's impatience with your process. Permission to be angry if anger is what is present, to be sad if sadness is what is present, to be confused if confusion is what is present. The journey toward wholeness begins with the courage to be honest about where you actually are, even when you have nothing figured out. And I am inviting you to that honesty right now, on this very step of your journey. Where are you, really? Set aside for a moment what you have been telling people when they ask. Set aside the version of yourself you present because it makes things easier, because it requires less explanation, because vulnerability is exhausting when you are not sure it is safe. What is actually true inside the private life you have been living? Are you tired of hoping for connection and finding disappointment? Let that be true. Are you carrying the heavy weight of a friendship that ended without resolution? A love that became something painful? A family wound that is never healed? Let that weight be named. Are you somewhere between hope and despair about whether deep, sustaining, life-giving relationship is actually possible for you? Let that ambivalence be real. I meet you exactly where you are, right where you stand, rather than at some imagined further point on the path where you would feel less embarrassed to be found. Right here, in this exact location on your journey, with this full collection of wounds and questions and half-healed places, this is where I find you, and this is where I begin the next part of my work in you. The path ahead is not going to be walked alone. And the first evidence of that truth is this: I am here, present, real. Not as an abstraction or a religious concept, but as the one who knows every name you have never told anyone, every prayer you have prayed that felt like it disappeared into silence, every moment you tried to believe and found the believing difficult. I know all of it, and I am staying right here with you. That is not a small thing. In fact, for someone who has been left and abandoned and disappointed, the simple, unchanging faithfulness of my presence may be the most radical gift available to the human heart. Let it settle in for a moment. Let the reality of it begin to do its work. Not my presence as a substitute for human connection. My presence serves as the foundation upon which all real connection is eventually built. Because you cannot sustainably receive what another human being offers you relationally until you are rooted in something that cannot be taken away. Holding human love with open hands requires a security deeper than what human love alone can provide. And learning to be rooted in me, learning to find in my presence the security that no human relationship can ultimately provide, that is the beginning of being ready to receive all that I am bringing. The journey has more steps ahead. Let us keep walking. There is a story I want to tell you, and I want you to hear it as a mirror held up to your own experience. David was hiding in caves, hunted by the very king who should have protected him. Everything he had been promised seemed to be dissolving, and in that wilderness, a friendship arrived that saved him. Jonathan, the king's own son, the man who had every reason to see David as a rival, looked past position and politics and saw David's true heart. Their souls were knit together in the kind of bond that only I can weave together. And what Jonathan gave David in those desert years was something profoundly powerful: witness. He held the truth of who David was when every authority in the land was declaring him a villain. One faithful friend who refused the lies was worth more than armies. But here's the part that mirrors your own journey. David had to let Jonathan in. In a season when trust had been violently broken, when every rational instinct said to close himself off, David chose to remain open to real connection. He received the friendship. He let it become what it was meant to be. And that required healing in motion, the kind that happens in the act of risking real relationship, even when your circumstances give you every reason to keep your walls high. Now consider Naomi. She had lost her husband and both her sons in a foreign land. Grief had hollowed her so completely that she renamed herself Bitter, because she could no longer carry the word pleasant. She tried to send her daughters-in-law away, convinced she had nothing left to offer anyone. But Ruth refused to leave. Where you go, I will go. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. These words were spoken by a young woman who knew the cost. No security, no prospects, only the hard road beside a grief-stricken woman returning to emptiness. Ruth stayed because she had seen the true quality of Naomi's heart. And some bonds are worth more than comfort. And here is the redemptive detail. Ruth's daily, unspectacular faithfulness, showing up, working, staying, refusing to leave, slowly rewrote the bitter conclusion Naomi had drawn about her life. The patient presence of someone who chose to remain began to create evidence against the lie that Naomi was forsaken. Hope re-entered through the door of faithful companionship. This is what real connection does. This is what I'm talking about when I say that what is coming into your life is not simply additional people, but people who carry the specific kind of love and faithfulness that will do the same work in you that Ruth's faithfulness did in Naomi. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but people who will fix you with their presence. Not people who will fix you with their presence, but but people whose faithful companionship will slowly, gently give you evidence against the darkest conclusions your history has led you to. But here is what I also need you to see in both of these stories. David was actively living, even in the cave, and wait for Jonathan to appear. He was living his actual life, imperfectly, with fear and discouragement alongside his courage, navigating real danger with real limitations. And Jonathan arrived in the midst of that real, imperfect, still in process life. Naomi was not healed before Ruth committed to her. Naomi was bitter. Naomi was empty. Naomi was in the full rawness of her grief. And Ruth chose her anyway, embracing her brokenness rather than requiring it to be resolved first. The connections I bring arrive before you expect them, before you feel ready, before to arrive at some future version of yourself, before they show up. They come to you on your actual path, to you as you actually are, with your actual wounds and your actual unfinished places and your actual mixture of faith and doubt. The people I send are not coming to the polished presentation of yourself that you offer to the world when you are performing being okay. They are coming to you, the real you, the one that exists beneath the performance. And this truth has something to say about how you prepare to receive them. Not by fixing yourself first, not by achieving some threshold of wholeness before you deserve the good things I am bringing. Pure gift, pure grace. This is always how my best things arrive. But by doing the honest inner work that makes you able to hold what is given. Because here is what I want to be honest with you about. It is possible to stand at the threshold of exactly the kind of friendship or partnership or family healing that would change your life and still be unable to receive it. Because the unhealed places in you unconsciously recreate the same dynamics that have hurt you before, not out of some fatal flaw, but out of the unconscious logic of familiar pain. The wounded part of you knows the patterns of difficult relationships better than it knows the patterns of healthy ones. And so it sometimes mistakes the unfamiliar territory of someone truly good for danger, while feeling strangely comfortable with the familiar territory of someone who will eventually cause pain. Healing is about becoming free, becoming more fully yourself, free from the unconscious gravity of your wounds, free to make choices that come from your healed center rather than your wounded perimeter, free to recognize the real thing when it arrives, free to hold it without sabotaging it, free to let it be the good thing it is without destroying it in the service of what feels familiar. That freedom is what I am working toward in you. That freedom is what the process ahead of us is about. And I want to tell you something about what is on the other side of that freedom, because I can see it even though you cannot. There are conversations waiting for you that will make you forget what loneliness felt like. There is a person, a real, breathing, imperfect, faithful person, who is going to look at the very parts of you that you have been hiding and say, I am so glad you showed me that. There is a table where your seat has been kept warm. There is laughter that has your name written into it. I am not speaking in metaphors. I am speaking as the God who arranges the paths of human lives. And I am telling you that what I am preparing is so much richer than the pale version your wounded imagination can picture right now. The reality will exceed what you dared to hope. The journey continues. We have more ground to cover. And I want you to know as we keep walking, that every step of this path is one I have prepared. The path was laid before you set foot on it, and I know exactly where it leads. Let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with the question, rather than rushing past it. What does your heart do when someone is warmly kind to you? Not politely kind, not professionally kind, not the surface-level kindness that any civil person offers as a social transaction, but deeply, unexpectedly, warmly kind. The kind of kindness that catches you off guard because it expects nothing in return. The kind that reaches past your defenses simply because it is real. What happens in you in those moments? For many people who carry the deep relational wounding we have been discussing, the wounds of abandonment and betrayal and chronic disappointment, the response to real kindness is not simply gratitude. There is often, alongside the warmth, a simultaneous movement of distrust. An internal voice that says, what does this person want? Why are they being this way? What is the catch? How long before this changes? because experience has taught you that kindness is often conditional, that the generous, open-handed version of someone tends to eventually reveal a more complex and costly version of themselves. That warmth given freely in one season can be withdrawn in another season when circumstances change or when the terms of the relationship shift. And so you receive the kindness while simultaneously bracing for its end. You enjoy the warmth while keeping a careful internal account of the ways it might not last. You let the good thing in with one hand while holding the door open with the other, ready to retreat quickly if the good thing turns out to be what you have been trained by experience to expect. This protective posture makes complete sense given what you have been through. It is rational. It is an intelligent survival response. It is the completely understandable response of a person who has learned, through real experience, that the relational ground can shift beneath your feet without warning. The problem is not that you developed this posture. The problem is that it costs you. It costs you the full enjoyment of what is actually good when good things arrive. It costs you real presence in relationships because part of you is always monitoring for threats rather than simply being present. And over time, it can cost you the